Hi, 7th graders. Happy Tuesday. Sorry for the lawnmower in the background. My neighbor is apparently mowing the lawn, which means that to keep up with my neighbors, I'm going to have to mow mine too. I've got dandelions all over the place. It's getting longer by the second. So I'll be doing that after I'm done posting this video. So hopefully you, for Monday, listened to the first half of the story, The War of the Wall. And then the only assignment was to post a comment at the end of the video. It wasn't a separate assignment. It didn't have to be turned into a Google Doc or anything. Just a comment right underneath the video where you explain something that you noticed, wondered, liked, disliked, predicted, were confused by, were surprised about, or a connection that you made. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing for today. I'm going to read the second half of the story, and I just want you to post a comment underneath the video, not a separate assignment, just a comment, making one of those, starting with our discussion starters. I noticed, I wonder, I liked, I disliked, I predict, I'm confused by, I was surprised when, or a connection I made was. So very easy assignment for today. Yesterday, where we left off, about halfway through the story, we have a narrator and we have his friend Lou, and we have a community with a wall that's very important to the community, and there is a lady who has come in and is painting a mural on that wall. Lou and his friend are not happy about this lady being there, and where we left off, the lady went into the narrator's family restaurant, and the narrator's mother is kind of waiting on this lady, and she's asking a ton of different questions about the menu. For example, is there cheese on the macaroni and that kind of thing. So the mother's getting very annoyed with this lady who's painting the mural, and that's where we're starting from today. So listen while I read. And I have Chewy, my cat, sitting on the windowsill, and he's listening too. Aren't you, Chewy? Chewy, you should come over here so the kids can see you. Maybe he'll come over and join us. That'd be fun. Okay, so here we go. When Mama finally took her order, the starving lady all of a sudden couldn't make up her mind whether she wanted a vegetable plate or fish and a salad. She finally settled on the broiled trout and tossed salad. But just when Mama reached for a plate to serve her, the painter lady leaned over the counter with her finger all up in the air. I gotta stop right now. Something I forgot to tell you. I'm sorry. You need to have your book out. I gotta get used to this stuff. Sorry, guys. You gotta have your book out, the pink book, and in the pink book, we're starting where the big W is on page 114. That's where we left off yesterday. So big W, big blue W on page 114. Okay, and I think I'll just put that in the description with the video so that you already have all that stuff out and ready to go. So now that I'm totally off track, I'm gonna go back to the big W. Follow along with me. Ready? Okay, here we go. When Mama finally took her order, the starving lady all of a sudden couldn't make up her mind whether she wanted a vegetable plate or fish and a salad. She finally settled on the broiled trout and a tossed salad. But just when Mama reached for a plate to serve her, the painter lady leaned over the counter with her finger all up in the air. "Excuse me," she said, "one more thing." Mama was holding the plate like a frisbee, tapping that foot, one hand on her hip. "Can I get raw beets on that tossed salad?" "You will get," Mama said, leaning her face closer to the painter lady's, "whatever Lou back there tossed. Now sit down." And the painter lady sat back down on her stool and shut right up. All the way to the country, me and Lou tried to get Mama to open fire on the painter lady, but Mama said that seeing as how she was from the north, you couldn't expect her to have any manners. Then Mama said she was sorry she'd been so impatient with the woman because she seemed like a decent person and was simply trying to stick to a very strict diet. Me and Lou didn't want to hear that. Who did that lady think she was, coming into our neighborhood and taking over our wall? Well, Mama drawled, pulling into the filling station so Daddy could take the wheel. It's hard to be an artist, you know. They can't always get people to look at their work, so she's just doing her work in the open, that's all. Me and Lou definitely did not want to hear that. Why couldn't she set up an easel downtown or draw on the sidewalk in her own neighborhood? Mama told us to quit fussing so much. She was tired and wanted to rest. She climbed into the back seat and dropped down into the warm hollow Daddy had made in the pillow. All weekend long, me and Lou tried to scheme up ways to recapture our wall. Daddy and Mama said they were sick of hearing about it. Grandmama tuned up the TV to drown us out. On the late news was a story about the New York subways. When a train came roaring into the station, all covered from top to bottom, windows too, with writings and drawings done with spray paint, me and Lou slapped 5. Mama said it was too bad kids in New York had nothing better to do than spray paint all over the trains. Daddy said that in the cities, even grown-ups wrote all over the trains and buildings too. Daddy called it graffiti. Grandmama called it a shame. We couldn't wait to get out of school on Monday. We couldn't find any black spray paint anywhere, but in a junky hardware store downtown, we found a can of white epoxy paint, the kind you touch up old refrigerators with when they get splotchy and peely. We spent our whole allowance on it, and because it was too late to use our bus passes, we had to walk all the way home, lugging our book satchels and gym shoes and the bag with the epoxy. So stopping there before we go on to the next big W on page 115, I would like you to yourself make a prediction. They just spent all of their money on this white epoxy paint. What do you think they plan to do with that epoxy paint? Okay, well, let's find out. So starting with that big W on 115. When we reached the corner of Taliaferro and 5th, it looked like a block party or something. Half the neighborhood was gathered on the sidewalk in front of the wall. I looked at Lou, he looked at me. We both looked at the bag with the epoxy and wondered, how are we going to work our scheme? The painter lady's car was nowhere in sight, but there were too many people standing around to do anything. Side Pocket and his buddies were leaning on their cue sticks, hunching each other. Daddy was there with a lineman he catches a ride with on Mondays. Mrs. Morris had her arms flung around the shoulders of the twins on either side of her. Mama was talking with some of her customers, many of them with napkins still at the throat. Mr. Eubanks came out of the barber shop, followed by a man in a striped poncho, half his face shaved, the other half full of foam. She really did it, didn't she? Mr. Fairbanks huffed out his chest. Lots of folks answered right quick that she surely did when they saw the straight razor in his hand. Mama beckoned us over, and then we saw it, the wall. Reds, greens, figures outlined in black, swirls of purple and orange, storms of blues and yellows. It was something. I recognized some of the faces right off. There was Martin Luther King Jr., and there was a man with glasses on and his mouth open like he was laying down a heavy rap. Daddy came up alongside and reminded us that was Minister Malcolm X. The serious woman with a rifle I knew was Harriet Tubman because my grandmama has pictures of her all over the house. And I knew Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer because a signed photograph of her hangs in the restaurant next to the calendar. Then I let my eyes follow what looked like a vine. It trailed past a man with a horn, a woman with a big white flower in her hair, a handsome dude in a tuxedo seated at a piano, and a man with a goatee holding a book. When I looked more closely, I realized that what had looked like flowers were really faces. One face with yellow petals looked just like Frida Morris. One with red petals looked just like Hattie Morris. I could hardly believe my eyes. Notice, Side Pocket said, stepping close to the wall with his cue stick like a classroom pointer. These are the flags of liberation, he said in a voice I'd never heard him use before. We all stepped closer while he pointed and spoke. Red, black, and green, he said, his pointer falling on the leaf-like flags of the vine. Our liberation flag. And here, Ghana. There, Tanzania, Guinea-Bissau, Angola, Mozambique. Side Pocket sounded very tall, as though he'd been waiting all his life to give this lesson. Mama tapped us on the shoulder and pointed to a high section of the wall. There was a fierce-looking man with his arms crossed against his chest, guarding a bunch of children. His muscles bulged, and he looked a lot like my daddy. One kid was looking at a row of books. Lou hunched me because the kid looked like me. The one that looked like Lou was spinning a globe on the tip of his finger like a basketball. There were other kids there with microscopes and compasses, and the more I looked, the more it looked like the fierce man was not so much guarding the kids as defending their right to do what they were doing. Then Lou gasped and dropped the paint bag and ran forward, running his hands over a rainbow. He had to tiptoe and stretch to do it. It was so high. I couldn't breathe either. The painter lady had found the chisel marks and had painted Jimmy Lyons' name in a rainbow. "Read the inscription, honey," Mrs. Morris said, urging little Frida forward. She didn't have to urge much. Frida marched right up, bent down, and in a loud voice that made everybody quit oohing and eyeing and listen, she read, "To the people of Taliaferro Street, I dedicate this wall of respect, painted in memory of my cousin, Jimmy Lyons." And that is the end of the story. So if you remember, Jimmy Lyons was mentioned at the very beginning of the story. He was the person who went away to fight in the Vietnam War and did not come back. So he was an important member of the community and important to a lot of the people of the community. And we find out at the very end of the story that the mural was painted in his memory as a sign of respect for him and for his life and for what his life stood for. And that the painter lady who painted the mural, the artist who painted the mural, was actually Jimmy Lyons' cousin. The mural itself was something really spectacular in the end. What the boys had planned to do with that epoxy paint probably was not a good thing. Obviously, once they saw how amazing this mural was and how it honored the people of the community, they changed their opinion about what the lady had done with their wall. So we're going to be sort of discussing this as much as we can from my phone and answering different questions, trying to relate a lot of what happened in the story back to your own lives in the coming days. But for today, really all I want you to do is the same thing that you did yesterday underneath this video. Leave a comment, starting with the discussion starter. I noticed, I wonder, I liked, I disliked, I predict, I'm confused by, I was surprised when, or a connection I made was. So that's it for today, 7th graders. Thank you for tuning in and listening and following along with the story. And I will be back tomorrow with a new video. Have a great day. Bye, guys. I miss you.